So, here's another way in which people seek their bliss. Actually, do we have that video? Do we have Michael's video? Jack, yes? All right, let's just play that.
Molly muskelwatsenen.
Uomo. Damenkirchen Osten.
Nee.
Floksenos en hele pille for Katja. Bene vivo et bene vivos. Meine buskula.
Swaren and Tinpen.
Kappa pustula.
And Tiske.
So a man finds himself and wakes up to find that he's one of the most famous chefs in the world. Michael and his wife, Nubuyo, live in a farm not far from Collingwood. It's called Eigensin. I was practicing the pronunciation. It's a German word. It apparently is named after an obscure Hermann Hesse novel, and translated roughly, it means persistence or perseverance or finding your own path. Michael Stadtlander has certainly found his own path. He's an immigrant to Canada, which of course makes him a passionate Canadian, a great champion of Canadian regional cuisine, Michael Stadtlander.
Thank you very much for having me here. And I was the last couple of days thinking about what I should talk about, and no ideas, lots of stuff always in my head, but what I want to really talk about, so much already said, what I'm doing and so on. But I think I want to use the opportunity to really kind of more tell you who I am and why I think the way I do things, and a couple of projects what I'm working on. I was born 1957 in North Germany on the Baltic, about 1 kilometer to the border to East Germany, near a town called Lübeck, and it was like in a little farming community. Right after the war, my parents were like having a milk business, and we had our own pigs and ducks and chickens and geese and all this stuff. It was really like a farm, like before, like what I call the industrialization of farming. And because there was very good things actually in that way, because my parents were so busy with all kinds of stuff, with the farming aspect and with the milk business, and school was not that important than it seems like these days. And I was always with my friends somewhere on the river or in the forest, and just having our games floating down the river on cut-off roofs from cars and all kinds of stuff what we invented as kids there. And really my biggest youth hero was actually a woman, and that was Pippi Langstocking. And I think always when I'm in very kind of difficult situations in my life, I still always think about her, and she makes me smile and go ahead with doing things. So it was great, you know, growing up that way and having lots of time and enjoying the beautiful natural world and so on. But as I said, school was not important. I never paid much attention to the importance of school, and I tried to get by the way I did. And but when came time to make a decision what I'm gonna do with my life after school, it came quite naturally for me to become a chef. Actually, I made there was two choices. One was a fish farmer, where like in our region there's a lot of carp racing and pike and other freshwater fish, but because I liked fishing. And then also the other choice, of course, was to become a chef. And with that, there was, again, my mother was also a chef for the border police later. And my uncle was a butcher, the other one was a pastry chef, the other one was a baker. And they all lived in a very close surroundings. So like I was quite influenced by all these people. And so it was easy for me, as I said, to become a chef. And once I kind of did my 3-year apprenticeship in my little town, not little town, but about a town of 300,000 people now, Lübeck. And that was the next bigger town to our village. From there, I kind of departed to, for some reason, I kind of really wanted to leave home very fast and wanted to get out of there, because at that time our farm went bankrupt, and more or less the industrialization of the farming kind of took over. And my father's milk business went down because of they were going with trucks before from one street to the other, and the supermarkets were taking over. And I wanted to put all this kind of behind me, and I wanted to go away. And that's one thing about being a chef there. The more you travel and the more you work with other people, in the end, as a young chef, later on you will become a better chef. So I went to Stuttgart, and I worked in a hotel there, and later on I worked with another chef, and his name was Vincent Klink. And he really was a big influence on me, and kind of things like, that was in the 1978, he was already using, everything was organic, and trying to work with farmers and with local people who are growing and raising regional things. And so that kind of, that person definitely also really formed me. And, but even at that time, when I was at that age, about 17, 18, and I always kind of had like the kind of feeling for Canada, because I always saw when I grew up, I saw some videos and films from the National Film Board about people going down in rivers and canoes, and just the glorification of this beautiful big country. And I thought, this is one place where I gotta go. This is gonna be my kind of what I've been brought up to be really when I grew up in Germany, to be, this is gonna be my life, you know, so. And later on I worked, after for a year, I was a chef on a destroyer in the German Navy. And after that I became a chef, commis de cuisine, commis de garde-manger in the Grand Hotel National in Luzern, and that's where I met my colleague, Jamie Kennedy, who was a Canadian. And with his kind of connection with his mother was a friend of Morten Jolles, kind of, we had the opportunity to become both the chefs of Scaramouche, and we opened Scaramouche. So there I was in Toronto, and I really kind of thought, well, I'm here in Canada now, and in the land of my dreams. But it was, at that point, it was kind of like a coming into a land of what had to be cultivated. And more or less, I kind of used the principles and techniques of what I kind of experienced with my teachers in Germany and so on. And, but you know, there's a lot of things what kind of I experienced in Toronto and what I did. I did Scaramouche, I did a restaurant called Nika, and I did the 21 McGill Women's Club. So there's a lot of experience, and also lots of failure. And but with failure comes wisdom, and so also kind of discovering yourself. But at one point I had a phone call from a restaurant in on Vancouver Island, a little hotel, a little inn on Vancouver Island in Souk, and I was invited to become the co-chef of that restaurant there. And when I went, actually I thought this was the kind of Canada what I really kind of visualized, was like the Canada of, you know, the people floating down in the canoes and so on, and the beautiful big country, because we had this little inn right by the ocean. There were people who were picking mushrooms in the forest, there were gardeners, there were fishermen who were delivering fish. And I thought I was in heaven, you know, but there was a problem. I brought my apprentice with me from Stadtlander, what kind of was close by my partners, because I was losing too much money, and I was not a real good businessman, and I'm still not today. But the problem I really had there, and I realized that that I'm not a real restaurant chef, because you know, like, you've been in the most beautiful environment, and you want to be the best chef you can be, but you have to produce something like 90, what we call covers, or 100 covers a day. And with any artist, you really try to be the best you can be. But after doing that, you're so exhausted. And then also the environment, again, at the same time, wants invite you to be part of her cycle, and you couldn't do that. So I came up with the realization that I gotta find a way of where I can cook and be part more with and in harmony with my environment. So that's what I figured out with what I'm doing now at Eigensen Farm. And what we are really doing is we're having a 100-acre farm. We are cooking for 16 people maximum, 3-4 nights a week, and we're trying to grow and raise as much as possible ourselves, organically. What we don't grow and raise, we kind of get from farmers and growers in our region. And so also we are trying to, what's also different in the way of what we are doing is like we're not a restaurant, is that people bring their own wine. And with that, you know, we have also a lot of bed and breakfasts around us with who we are kind of recommending people to stay. So they go there, they drop off their clothes and overnight stuff, and then they're being driven over to our place, so there's no drinking and driving. But also what people actually experience in our place is a real kind of feeling of, I mean, food and taste of the environment. And again, you get the person who really is a person actually in a way kind of connected to the land. Like you don't put like the working space there, your working place there, and then you go home and you are different and entering a different space. It's not like that at all. Like as I said, this was the thing what I came to realize. This is the place what I needed to be creative and to be living in a healthy environment and to be the best I can be. So I actually thought, this is actually what I was going to come to, that this is the kind of thing what I'm working on right now. I'm also at the advisory board of the Ministry of Tourism for Ontario, and there's always some money there to be released to put something into economy tourism based. How can we get some of this money? And I had this idea. The people, the chefs who are coming to my place and work with me, they work for room and board. And so I always visualize these young chefs also like to doing similar things, what I'm doing. And I have been traveling from Ontario, Toronto, about 4 or 5 times by bus or by car, and I really know a little bit to British Columbia, not to the East Coast yet, and I really get a feeling of what Canadians are like. They're very friendly, they're very outgoing, they take you into their home and all kinds of, they're very beautiful people. So I always, as I said, I see the chef as a gardener, not as a gardener, as a potter or as a glassmaker, some like a crafts arts person. So I thought, from a tourist point of view, it would be, of course, we have all these big hotels in Banff and Jasper and all over like that, and Quebec and so on, and we have beautiful restaurants all over in the big cities. I think it would be great if we can work with the colleges like George Brown College and figure out this kind of where you get this mark, this stamp, when you are kind of went through this training or through this class, that you actually can open up like a little place. Doesn't have to be like as elaborate like as ours, where you do like a 7 or 8 course menu, but you do a 4-course menu somewhere on Baffin Island, or you do it on Vancouver Island, somewhere in some beach house. And you have this kind of more or less roadmap of all these different places where people do kind of cook, represent, work with the local gardeners, local farmers, and even better with organics. And that way, like tourists who are coming, let's say from France or Germany, Italy, wherever, sophisticated tourists who are looking for an experience out of the conventional restaurant, hotel side, you really, in that way you get also a real flavor of that particular region. And that's really one thing what I like to kind of get across at this moment, and I think it would be a wonderful thing. And there's another thing what I like to talk to you about, what's really on my mind right now. What's, if we don't really stand up in Canada right now, and we will have genetically modified wheat on the market by next year, on the growing by next year in the fields, in the prairies of Canada. I try to kind of connect chefs and media and any other people who have something to say about it. But at this moment, there's no momentum going. But I will tell you a little bit what they are trying to do. You know, with genetically modified canola and soya bean, there's really no more organic soya beans. People who had like organic soya bean market in Europe cannot sell anymore. They lost all their markets because of cross-pollination. And I mean, it's same with Asia. And the same thing is happening about right now with wheat, that the same thing will happen, it will cross-pollinate it. And one thing, once you start doing this, there will be no more way going back later, because it will be in the system, it will be in the wild varieties, and we can say, well, that didn't work. But you think about it, wheat is the biggest fuel of the human race, and this is one of the last things I would really consider to monkey around with. And I mean, there's things like once farmers sign up with this, as a farmer, you can't keep your own seed. This is the first time in the history of agriculture, of the human race, that farmers cannot keep their own seeds. So, I mean, you're going back to the feudal system. It's like becoming actually like the, what do you call it, the workers for the big multinational companies who will have these rights to grow and do these things. And even like you think about bakers and bread and so on, you don't even know how exactly this thing is going to be come out, how it's going to taste, how it's going to rise, all the flour and all that stuff, you know, and the kind of damage it will do in the whole chain of like the wildlife. So that's really one thing I would like to invite people who are could be part of that, to get this out in the open, and that we not let that happen, that these genetically modified wheats are going to actually grow on our land. Well, the last thing what I really kind of, you know, working on right now is I'm making a movie, and it's still in the research and development, but it's a movie about celebrating life and with food. And what we did, what I'm doing there, I'm doing like 5 little vignettes of different festivals. One we had last Saturday, what we did a 200 people sit-down dinner, 9 courses, and was associated with 20 chefs and 20 servers. We built the whole dining room out of recycled materials. In this case, it was skids, the benches and the tables. The roof were like a canopy of old fence wire and straw on top. And again, as I said, it was a 9-course menu. We built the pizza ovens right into the ground. We built the oyster temple of love, totally out of oyster shells. It was the first station, and all things like that. So this was like our first little vignette. Then the next one will happen on the 16th of August, where we will have a 10-course menu with most of the produce, what we kind of grow and raise on our farm. And it will start at the same site where I told you about this dining room. And then when it comes around, we will come back for dessert at this place, and there will be a 40-seat classical youth orchestra from the United States and Canada, with the conductor from the Vienna State Opera and conducting Beethoven's 6th Symphony. And that will be another one. So there's the music and going over the whole farm. So the next one is about playing a little bit on the old 60s and 70s, where we have a 3-day lovin'. And the 3-day lovin' is really like pulling on a little bit about, this is only about for 40, 50 people, and it's only by invitation. It's about, we kind of have to start again where we left a long time ago, and get too busy and you know, be nice to each other and find out about ourselves a little bit more again. So, and always I think one of these problems is that we don't have this kind of longer times what we spend with each other. So that's why I put 3 days together, and what we're doing there is like people come between like 9 and 12 o'clock, set up their tent, and then we're going to use our barn for like 2 breakfasts, free lunch, and free dinners. And in between there will be arts performance and music and wine tastings and massage and God knows what else, you know. But so that's the 3-day lovin'. And then also we're going to have later on, because it's our 10-year anniversary at Eigensen Farm, we have a like a dinner in the what do you call that? In our maple forest with like the best apprentices from our last 10 years. So and again the 6-course menu. So like you can see really what I'm doing with this movie is really also bringing back the kind of experience when I grew up in the forests and rivers in Germany. And so like the really kind of promising clips from the National Film Board really kind of inspired me to the best what I'm actually trying to do today. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.